If I play the best songs in the world and you're entertained, it doesn't mean a thing. Just waste your time. Right? But if something happens, see, I've given my life to making music. Every fiber of my being when I play, I give it. I don't hold anything back. And I don't know what is going to come out next. Does that make any sense? But when Mike told me about this morning, I thought, I don't care about proving anything to you about my music. But if I can leave something with you that will change your destiny, then I would like to do that. All right? Okay. I'm a student of this. Now, I don't practice, like I don't really just practice the horn. I meditate the position that I have to be in order to play it with unlimited force, unlimited endurance, and unlimited altitude. No matter who you are and no matter what you are into now, you are a product of the sounds that you have allowed to come into your head and into your heart. If you want to change where you are now, it cannot happen any other way. You have to change the sound. And although I spent a very light amount of time, I spent a year in a federal, but I learned a couple of things about atmosphere in there. The atmosphere in prison is about the same as it is in hell. What's the deal? You don't have the ability to change it, but you do have the ability to affect how it impacts you. Does that make sense? Now, I don't know, I don't know whether, I want to read you a couple things, okay? When it comes to music, I'm a general for God. Amen. And there's a verse, I'm going to tell you a couple things. Number one, Lucifer can't play the brass because the brass God reserved to announce royalty. Lucifer can't play it. You understand? But when you understand that God, if you know anything about God, you know God is omniscient. He's in the beginning and he's in the end. That means he's in the beginning of you and he's in the end of you. Does that make sense? Okay. If God is in the beginning, then when he created Lucifer, and I'm not going to take the time to go there, but in Ezekiel it says that he was created, that God created him, and he was perfect in all of his ways until iniquity was found in him. And now watch. Because God is unconditional love. That's what he is. He's unconditional light. Music travels in the slowest spectrum of light called radio waves, okay? God is light, but he saw Lucifer. Think about it. He created this being who at the very center of him was all music. He created rhythm, he created harmonies, and he created woodwinds, the melody, right? But God never took him off of his position, although he knew he was going to fall. Think about that. He didn't say, well, I know you're going to fall, so I'm not going to give you master control of heaven. What he did was, he gave him the highest rank, and then when he fell, he lost that right. Because I'm a musician, I can listen to somebody play. When I was really on my game, I'm 68. I don't know how much on my game I am, but I'm getting better when I play. Right? But if I would listen to you play, I could tell within 100 miles of where you were born, because it comes out in you. I could listen to you and tell you to a degree how smart you were, because it comes out, right? I could tell you how sensitive you were, because it comes out in the sound. The sound is a picture of you. Your sound today is a picture of you. And if you want to stay like you are, stay in the same sound zone. But if you want to change it, you have the right to change it. Do you hear what I'm saying? But I had this interesting conversation, to take a little digression. I said, God, it says Lucifer was perfect in all of his ways until iniquity was found in him. How did you find it? You know what he told me? He said, I heard it in the sound. And then what he said was, I had no choice, because by the time I had heard it, it had already infiltrated 1/3 of the angels in heaven. Now, you may not believe me, but I don't really give a flying flip if you do or not. Okay? But if you listen to me, will you hold my Bible for just a minute, brother? Here's what I learned to do. There's a law. If I do rock and roll shows, and I have a noise ordinance right here of 120 dB, but right here I can't break it. You know how I stop the noise? I reverse the sound equally as loud. So if my speakers are blowing 125 dB this way, and I turn speakers around right here, and I put them 125 dB out of phase, the sound dies right there. That's the law. Okay? Opposite sounds cancel. Now, in this place, you are in the middle of an atmosphere that is not good, no matter how you cut it. Because you're going to sound is, in the natural law, sound is a reaction to what happens. Ask Mike Barber. There's a reason bookmakers put a plus on a hometown advantage. You know why that is? It's the sound, man. Because what happens, sounds accompany actions. In the natural law, that's it. Big play, big sound. Spectators don't make any sound. It's fans that make sounds. There's a lot of spectators that call themselves Christians. They have no power. They have no ability to control anything because they sound just like the world. If you sound like your fellow prisoners that are in trouble without God, you're going to get the same thing they get. That's the law. That is the law. But if you know the law, here's the law. Stand up, brother, for me just 1 minute, will you? If I push against you, you're going to push back, and you're probably stronger than me. If I push you, you're going to push back. Push back a little bit. Come on, you all right? Now, that's the law, okay? Now sit down so you don't get in trouble. Now listen, but here's the law of faith. See, the thing that separates the men from the boys for God is if you're going to operate for God, you got to operate by faith. If you don't, you break the law. I'm a pilot. I got 17,000 hours in airplanes. I fly single pilot airplane that flies to 45,000 feet, does 500 miles an hour, and flies 2,000 nautical miles without stopping. That's what I do, okay? Because I've been everywhere for 5 minutes for God. But I played for 5 presidents. I've been to the White House many times. And one of the times that I went, I played for the Congressional Medal of Honor awardees, the guys that have lost limbs for our country. I never will forget this. They got the Marine Band to play for me, and I played America the Beautiful. And I cried. I could not hardly even play. To think of the sacrifice of our country. Our country's in trouble. The only thing that'll turn it around are people that believe in God's ability to stand up for what is right. That's the only thing that's going to turn it around. There is no other thing. There's no other thing that will turn it around. But here's the thing I learned. One of my friends who became a friend of mine was the former Secretary of Defense, Bill Cohen. And when I played at Kennedy Center. And when I finished, he said, "Would you like to come to the Pentagon?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to come." I didn't know how big that was. I saw the red phone. I touched the red phone, man. But he said to me, "So what do you fly?" I said, "I fly a Citation." He said, "What would you like to fly?" I said, "If I had my dream." He said, "Yes." I said, "I'd like to fly an F-18. And he said, "Consider it done." He said, "Would you like to get in a dogfight?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Would you like to take off from an aircraft carrier?" I said, "That's been a dream of mine." Now you say, "Why in the heck are you telling me that?" Because God knows the innermost desires of your heart. I had never, ever asked him. I never asked him. But I've been faithful to him. Faithfulness unlocks the door of God's greatness. I'm going to say it again. Faithfulness unlocks the door of God's greatness for you. I'm going to say it again. Faithfulness, being faithful to God in whatever he's called you to do, in however he's called you to do it, being faithful to him unlocks heaven's finest for you. You say, well, how in the heck can it unlock where I am? Let me tell you something, man. There are a lot of guys that it was totally impossible to get out that are out. It's not because of your understanding or how well you can become a lawyer. It's not your job to get you out. It's God's job, but you have to understand that words are process starters. Can you remember that? Jesus, when you study Jesus, he never did a thing that he didn't say it first. And he never would ever talk about the problem. When the girl that was dead, he said, she's sleeping. He never gave voice to the situation. What he did was he talked by faith how the situation was going to come around. When are you getting out? Any day now. When are you going to get delivered? Any day now. And when your mind says, no, you can't, you just shush your mind. But I want to finish this. You have a thing inside of you called the inner ear, okay? What I do is I put in earplugs or I stuff crap in my ears, right? And then I say what the Word says about me. Does that make sense? I want to tell you how. I take a verse. Let me see. Do I just take a verse? Let me find one. Any verse. Let me find some. My Bible's coming apart, but it's staying for the day. I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. Not half of your heart, your whole heart. You know how you praise him with your whole heart? By giving every bit of energy that you have in his direction. That's how you do it. I praise you with my whole heart. I will show forth, that's King James. God doesn't speak King James unless you do. I will show all your marvelous works. Now, I can tell you how I've been in airplane crashes and God delivered me. That doesn't mean much to you unless you were there, right? But if you can remember, I'm sure that you would say to me, there's a time that had God not showed up in my life, I'd be dead. Okay? Right? I'm sure there's a time that you can think about someone you love that had God not intervened, they would be dead. And you know how you get thankful? You get thankful by telling him how you remember how he delivered you. Do you understand? But here's what I do. Lord, I just want to thank you. I shout it. Get in the yard. I just want to thank you that you are my deliverer. And I don't give a dang what's going on around me. I am going to trust you. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? I remember, because I came out of just the rock and roll, hell-raising lifestyle. But when I got Jesus, he changed me from the inside out, right? Does that make sense to you? He changed me from the inside out. And I know, man, there's only one thing that fuels my fire to come here today, is I know that if you will forget everything else that happened up here, but remember one thing, I can change where I am by the sound that I make. I can change my future by the sound that I make. I don't care how bad it is. I could care less how bad it is. But let me tell you something. I had a faith failure. I'm sure a lot of people say this, I wasn't guilty, and I was believing God that I was going to be acquitted. Well, guess what? I was convicted. And I was so mad at God. How did you let this crap happen to me? I've been serving you, right? If you're mad at God, you stop him. He can't help you. But you know what he taught me? And these are the things I would like to share, and I don't want to take too much time. Am I okay, Mike? Am I all right? I learned the difference between faith and trust. Faith has to be based on your trust. Now, but there's another thing. If you examine faith, there's one thing that faith lives in. You know what it is? It's a container called hope. If you lose your hope, you can't have any faith. So if the natural order says there's no way in hell this can happen, then you got to go to this word. And you've got to find where in this word it says all things are possible, believe only. Where it says in Mark, if you say to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and you don't doubt. You say, well, everybody's got doubts, but you can resist doubts. You know what I found? There's a verse that says, casting down every imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, the knowledge of God. So, if you understand that Jesus, when he walked on the earth, said, all things are possible, believe only. When Jairus' daughter was sick and they came and told him, she's dead, Jesus said, fear not, believe only. So, if he told you to do it, there's an ability in the human spirit to resist fear. There's an ability inside you that has to be unlocked by the tables of this word that will cause you to be able to stand against fear, against hopelessness, against everything Satan would put against you. There is given to you your divine right by God. And when you understand this, you become radical. And you become one that changes others around you. And if you can only see that. If I play the horn like this, if I just go, okay, big deal. Anybody can do that, right? Because I don't put that much of myself in it. I coast. The world is full of Christians that coast. When you coast, you go nowhere fast. You're slowing down. But when I know the law, I know the law. I don't play the trumpet, I am a trumpet. This just amplifies what's in me. You are not a praiser or a worshiper. You are the sound in this place. You're the sound of God. The difference is, that cannot be made unless you give it recklessly. Does that make sense? Now, there's a verse. Where'd my Bible go? Thank you, brother. I'll trade you. There's a verse. I'm hurrying. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 14. And it says, even things without life-giving sound. That could be people that love God but refuse to sound like he says. Whether it's pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sounds, how shall it be known what is piped or harped? If the trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who's going to be called in the battle? Here's the verse. There are so many kinds of voices or sounds in the world, and none of them is without signification. So when you understand that every sound that comes out of you is a process starter. I'm going to say it again. Every sound. Si es en español, es lo mismo, ¿sabes? Lo misma cosa. Cuando hablas en español, algo que es como esas palabras, nunca, ¿cómo se dice? Muerte? Yeah. It never dies. And when you understand that, it'll change the way you look at your world, okay? Now, when you go to a ball game, it's easy to find who's the winner. Listen to the fans. On one side, silence. Silence is the accompanying sound of defeat. Do you hear me? On the other side, it's radical, balls to the wall sound. Ah! I mean, that's the kind of sound that a fan makes. A spectator just sits there, right? 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 Am I right? Okay. But now listen. Here's the law. Here's the law. The law says we call those things or sound those things that be not as though they were. Now, if you're down and things are bad, the human tendency is to sound like down, right? But if you find yourself in the tables of this word, who says, no weapon formed against me will prosper, who says, every tongue that rises up against me in judgment, I get to condemn. When you find yourself, you can't do it on your own, but you can find yourself in this word. It's like jet fuel to a jet engine. When you can have the biggest engine on planet Earth with no fuel, it's going nowhere. You can have the guy that loves God, he's a Christian, but he got no fuel, he's going nowhere. He changes nothing in his world, right? When you understand that, we call those things that be not as though they were, right? Now, the human tendency when I'm down is to sound down. That's where the blues come from, right? Right? But if I find myself in this word and I say, you know what? I can either choose to stay down or I can choose to take the fuel of this word and begin to sound like what it says I am. And when I do that, then I change. I change from the sound of defeat to the sound of victory. Praise is a force field that God created long before. It's like gravity. The wind beneath your wings is as useless as the runway behind you, the gas you didn't put in the airplane, and the altitude you don't have. Do you understand? The wind under your wings doesn't make you fly. It's the law of lift. Literally, airplanes are lifted by that law. But the law of lift is brought into play by the law of thrust. See? Thrust is a power that is developed that causes lift. The same thing for God. When God commanded you, whether you're black, white, green, purple, ugly, smart, old, it doesn't matter. He commanded you to make a sound in his honor. But most guys don't understand why. That's just something a radical person does. Yeah, that's right. But when you understand, it's that sound that propels you out of the defeat zone into the victory zone. You can either live defeated or you can live victorious. It is not up to God, it's up to you. And when you understand that, then it changes the way you operate in this life. Now, I want to do this if I can. Would you join hands across? And then let me join hands with you, brother. Come on right here. Father, I pray for every person in this chain. Satan, I bind your power. You will not operate in them. You are bound from being in their lives, in their families, in their personal affairs, and in their legal predicament. I bind and break your power. I call for favor to come into every man under the sound of my voice. And I loose all forces of heaven to come on their scene and to do exceedingly and abundantly above anything they can dream of or imagine. Because God, your word says you are great, that your ways are higher than our ways. And so, Lord, I want you to agree with me now. Say this with me. I agree.
I agree.
And I receive, in the mighty name of Jesus, this coming to me now. I will not live a defeated lifestyle from this minute on. I refuse to sound fearful from this minute on. Depression, go from me. Fear, you cannot live in me. And I surrender my life to you, Lord, I am yours to command. In the mighty name of Jesus. And I give you praise right now. Now look at me. One of the things, I've gone through some things in my life that hurt. And there's natural hurt that comes, okay? But you don't have to let it prophesy your future. You don't have to let it. Because Jesus, when he makes you a new creature, says old things pass away. That's what this baptism thing is all about. Do you realize in the time of the Jews, before Jesus came, they would go once a year to Jerusalem, and they would offer, the priest would offer a blood sacrifice for their sins. You remember that? But what you have to also understand is there was another goat that was given. And that goat took all the sins of all the children of Israel. And they watched as that goat, called a scapegoat, walked from the middle of town into the wilderness to never be heard of again. That's a symbol. When Jesus came, he not only cleansed you, but he caused everything bad that had happened in your past to be taken out of your mind, your emotions, your city. Does that make sense? And so those of you that are going to be baptized, let me tell you what it means. You know, it's real easy to be a closet Christian. It's easy. But Jesus said, if you're ashamed of me before men, I have no choice because of that law. I have no choice but to be ashamed of you before my Father. And I want to promise you, those of you that are making the decision to be baptized, I want to tell you what you should believe to happen. When you go under the water, you are literally buried with Jesus, and a new man arises. And that man has no color, he has no hatred, he has no vendetta other than to be all that God has called him to be. And I want to just say this to you. God needs strong men to represent him. I'm going to say it one more time. God is looking for strong men who will not be afraid to be called by his name, to stand up for him in a world that doesn't stand up for him much. But I want to tell you this. You can never outgive him. You can never be taken down. You can be hit on. But God restores everything in your life. And I'll tell you a funny thing that happened, because there were many things this time to tell me that I couldn't come. Right? I'm just telling you. It was like all hell broke loose. And I walked out of those walls last night to my phone, and I looked on my phone, and I had an invitation to go to London. I had an invitation to go to other places in Europe. I had an invitation to do several things, and I know that that was the seed, a quick harvest on the seed. Remember this, when you sow into God, however it is, and you do it because you love him and because you are his servant, then God begins the process of returning to you, but it's always so much bigger than you could give to him. I look forward. Come up, Mike. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, Dad. I look forward to tonight, and I pray that God will really use it. God bless you. I'll see you tonight.